so we're live, Brother Minister.
Fantastic.
Okay. I want to thank everyone who was watching for taking time out of your busy schedule today for a very special guest. I'm honored to have Minister Rasul Muhammad on Off the Record with us today on
Uncle
Facebook
Rasul,
Live.
you uncle.
Yes, sir, Uncle Rasul.
Twisted.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Uncle Rasul Muhammad. I remember when I was younger, he would tell us to call him Tio Rasul.
That's
And
right.
yes, sir. And now I'm in Spanish, Uncle Rasul in college, and it is one of the hardest classes I've ever taken. But okay. but I remember Tio very well because I know that means uncle.
That's right.
Yes, we want to get straight into it.
Yes.
Brother Minister,
Yes.
when we know that you grew up in the nation, you were born in the nation from great lineage of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Mother Tynetta Muhammad. Yes. When you were, how was it like the climate growing up in the household of Mother Tynetta Muhammad and being the son of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Well, I think as many who have heard the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as well as Mother Tynetta Muhammad, you could easily deduce that from these two minds, their spirituality, their level of spirituality was pervasive in the domestic life, meaning within the home and what they shared. Simple things, I guess I would call them simple because it is the domestic culture of our upbringing. Myself, my brother, student minister, Ishmael Muhammad, who is the national assistant to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, my brother Ahmed, who is in the Ministry of Communication and Information for the Nation of Islam, and my sister, Medea. My mother instituted this practice at home that whenever we were sitting at the dinner table, we had to ask questions that furthered our intellectual and spiritual development. Prayer was always practiced at home with Mother Tynetta Muhammad, and the dietary law of how to eat to live by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But the main thing I remember in our upbringing, since I was a toddler, was always conversation and questions pertaining to the supreme wisdom and those 154 lessons that were given to us by Master Fard Muhammad back in the early 1930s. This was the base of our nutrient or food for the development of our minds since we were 2, 3, 4 years old, toddlers, and all the way unto the time of both the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's departure in 1975, and even up to the time of my mother's transition in 2015. And I hope to continue that tradition, that domestic tradition.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. And I thank you all for tuning in, and I see your comments, and I thank you for your questions as well. Brother Minister, we see or saw your father, those who were around prior to 75, but we in the generation of, especially the people where I'm trying to get to introduce you to, the 35 and under. Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We saw your father through very serious lenses. We saw him as very intense. He's the messenger of Allah. Could you share with us some things of him being a father to you, in a more relaxed environment?
The first thing that sticks out in my mind is two things that I think many people didn't get a chance to see if you were not within that domestic environment at home. One, my father was very, very affectionate and loving.
Mm.
And I mean, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, even once he said to me at the age of 7, he saw in me captain, and he would always refer to me as his captain. And
Mm.
when I would give him a kiss, once or twice, it was at the dinner table around his laborers as well as guests and visitors that were dining at the home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He would say, "Ooh, he even kisses like a captain." So that was that was very strong in my mind growing up. He also was very musically and artistically inclined, for
Mm.
which he said these words, Josh, to my mother. He said, "Music, color, and medicine are the essence of the true religion of Allah." Now,
Mm.
check that out. Music, color, and medicine, the essence of the true religion of Allah. And that is because in all of Allah's creation, throughout the universe itself, and especially through all of the species that are on this planet, life, even on other planets, one of the greatest forms of communication from the heart and the essence of living creatures is sound. And not just any sound. If you look up the word noise, this is distorted or disturbing sound. But when there is a harmonic conversion in the sounds that we hear, we call that music. And so the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, music is essential in creation. And then the other word, color, color is nothing more than a gradient of light.
Mm.
Think over this. And medicine is defined as uh, um, it's called how you treat illness, a substance or substances used to treat illness. But medicine is actually a code word for love.
Mm.
LOVE. And I believe that we are growing spiritually under these teachings in the Nation of Islam. The word transferred into word, meaning the sound of the expressed thought, but the channel and language in the hereafter and as a healing in the before then will come in the form of music, and it will be expressed in gradients of light called color. And it will
Mm.
be the resurrecting medium as a medicine to uplift, heal souls of human beings. It's medicinal, man. And that's why I'm excited about this being online with you,
Yes,
Joshua.
sir.
I love you.
Yes.
I always have loved you. And recently I learned about your artistic expression. I first saw you as a young man, you know, I mean, drilling like nobody I know, you know. You know, I
Yes,
just
sir.
thought it was beautiful. And then recently, now discovering your endeavors in play, in
Yes, sir.
acting, dramatic arts, and music, and singing, and doing musicals. My God, Joshua, that's what I used to do. Look, I'm telling you, man, about 30 something years ago, I was a dramatic arts director at the university in Mexico.
Mm.
I used to write and compose musicals. And my first musical play was inspired when I was in New York in 1985. And I saw this play off Broadway called Mama, I Wanna Sing. And so I went down to Mexico, back to the university, where I was teaching dramatic arts. And I did a Spanish adaptation of Mama, I Wanna Sing. And I called Quiero cantar, I Wanna Sing. And it was a great, great hit in the country of Mexico, and specifically in the city where I was. And it was because that was my soul crying for a way that was artistic and more expressive of the Spirit of God that was in me, and it's still in me to this very day. I want to sing. I don't want to preach in the dictatorial way, as many ministers do. I want my ministry to be one of love through the arts, because that is the language and the way that you get to the human heart and bypass the complications of their brain and how they think.
Praise be to the Lord. Thank you, Brother Minister.
You're
and I
so
thank you all
welcome.
for your comments. And a lot of people are showing you love, Brother Minister, and we thank you all. I see your comments and your questions, and we're coming to them. Brother Minister, when you because I grew up in the strict of drill, military, so I can only imagine what it was like prior to 75 with just the discipline of the nation. How were you able to find your creativity in music in such an intense environment?
It is because I can't think of anything more important, and I'm going to use the word prerequisitional for youth than first, in the first stage of their maturation when they're at home. I would say from birth to 16 or 18 years of age. The first and most important thing, as much as our nature screams for freedom, the most important thing we need is discipline. And so as I looked at you and I reflected on myself and my own upbringing, I can bear witness now that I'm in my early 50s that discipline was absolutely necessary. Even while I did everything everybody else did, with the exception of my artistic expression, I played football. I ran the streets, At one time, I thought I was a little thuggy thug, you know what I'm saying? I got in trouble. I landed myself in jail 7 times. But don't let nobody know, because I ain't one gossip. But I was just I was an American so-called Negro. You know what I'm saying? but that rebellion, I'm telling you, Josh, there is, oh my God, I'm not trying to inspire nobody to be rebellious, but going through a rebellious stage is absolutely necessary. Rebellion is in your DNA. Oh my gosh. I'm not trying to put nobody in a position where we start singing, "Who let the dogs out?" No, that's not what's going on here. But rebellion is part of your development. It is absolutely in your DNA. What do you think happened 50,000 years ago with the tribe of Shabazz?
Yes, sir.
They rebelled against the order and council at that time and took his followers into the jungles of East Asia, as you find in the Supreme Wisdom or Lessons. No, it's not that that was right, but it was that that was necessary to cultivate a stronger and more resistant human being. And if it were not for that rebellion that took us into the harsh conditions of the jungles of Africa, it is found and proven to this day we would not have been able to survive slavery. And under slavery, no other people endured like the rebellious Black man and woman who had been already conditioned in the jungles of East Asia and Africa. This is where we became hardened and enabled to survive slavery. Every child goes through a cycle where they start bucking the authority. This is the most critical and dangerous stage of our life. But as we learn discipline, and the first thing about discipline is order. There's a time to sleep, there's a time to wake up, there's a time to pray, there's a time to eat, there's a time to study, there's a time to play. The Bible puts it like this: there's a time to mourn. All of the emotional expressions, there's a time for it. You see? Even sex. Sex ain't dirty. It's wonderful. And
yes, sir.
Don't worry, I'm not about to teach on it. But the point is, it's natural, but there's a time for it. If you get into sexual activity before you're mature enough to be responsible for the consequences of sex, like when young people do what's called fornicate, which is sex outside of commitment, sex outside of marriage, you see? Or even when people commit adultery, which is sex with somebody that is not your committed spouse. What this is doing is playing with a natural law that is meant to be governed by structure. Think over this. And that's when you get into trouble. But within structure of marriage, well, you know, there used to be a saying prior to 75, and people would use it all the time. Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, what happens behind doors stays behind doors. And that sounds a lot, that sounds a lot like that saying, you know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But be married so that you can be responsible. Look at that word, responsible. Able to respond if she gets pregnant. Able to respond to rearing children. Able to respond to maintaining and caring, which means to trouble yourself for the woman who has opened herself up to you. See, at that point, it's safe. None of the restrictive laws are meant to displease you. All of the restrictive laws are meant to put you in an order where you can enjoy endless love and pleasure that comes natural in life when you respect order and exhibit responsible character that will secure a wife, a family, and children. So it's all about timing.
Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. And thank you very much, Brother Minister. And I see your comments and your questions. We're coming right to them. I want to thank the sponsors of this podcast this evening. We got my brother Rashad with Street Premiere and Politically Oppressed. Thank you for sponsoring this podcast so we can hear from Brother Minister Rasul. We have my sister Mimi's book, ABC I Love Me. I thank you very much, Mimi, for your book. And we have Brother Aaron from Chicago with Akira's Coffee Shop at 1845 South State Street. 1845 South State Street. I thank you all for your sponsorship so that we can hear from Minister Rasul Muhammad this evening. Brother Rasul, my sister Miriam, Mimi, we know it's Mimi, says, what is your favorite song to sing growing up. And she said she loved hearing you sing the piano at the Salon restaurant. And what is your favorite song to play now?
Oh, wow. I think back then it was all kinds of songs and every kind of genre. My favorite artist of all times to this day is Stevie Wonder. And you know what's funny? I started playing in piano bars in Mexico back in 1982, in 83, and 84. And people got to know Rasul because he was the piano player and singer in these different bars. And my favorite artist was always Stevie Wonder. And so I would put on some dark glasses, similar to what I have on right now, and I'd be playing the piano, and I'd be rocking. Isn't she lovely? Isn't she wonderful? And then I'd rock it, right? But the joke is on me, Josh, because I was playing blind then. Now I'm really blind. Oh my God. So careful how you imitate. It might become what you imitate. But yeah, nowadays, I don't do a lot of imitating. I do a lot of composing and creating of my own music. And that's what you'll find if you go to my website, Rasul Online, RASUL, Rasul Online, and look at maybe you might want to make a contribution and purchase one of my CDs. They are available. All of the songs, every last one of them, there's 22 of them between the two CDs, and they're all original cuts. Check them out for yourself. I think you'll enjoy it. And I got another CD I'm working on right now. As you know, before we started this show, I told you, we might want to look at what's happening down there in Atlanta.
Yes, sir. Yes,
maybe you can connect the brother, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They're all inspirations. And my mother is on the latest CD that I have available, which is called Rasul, the Man, the Message, the Music. You can even go online, look it up on YouTube. You'll find it there. You'll find some of my music on Spotify, my songs. You will also find them. There's quite a few I don't know, and you can check it out free of charge, literally. And my favorite right now to date is the one I dedicated to my mom, and it's called "I'm Following Your Light." So let my niece, me know she can go check out.
Yes, sir. Okay, Brother Minister, I have a question. Since you brought up your eyesight with being blind, you seem to not, if I didn't know, I wouldn't know. You seem to have the spirit. When I saw you at Savior's Day, anytime I see, even now, what keeps your spirit so happy and upbeat while going through something like that?
I have to be honest, and I'm not trying to sound super religious and spiritual and ministerial, but it's really Allah, His mercy and His grace that I have not suffered being blind. I really haven't. And I believe it is because I've had dreams and visions where I saw myself seeing again. In fact, a very impacting vision that I had that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told me that it was a vision-like experience that I had that he compared to the one he had in 1985, where he was taken up on the ship and he heard the voice of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad instructing him on what to do. And if he followed those instructions, the next time he would bring the minister back to that wheel and see him and meet with him face to face. Well, in 2014, I had a vision-like experience where my father came and picked me up and took me up to the ship. And he took me out of my body in a form of light, pure light. And I looked over at these glass tubular beds that were surrounded by these, I understood them in the vision as angels, but they were like beings of light. And they had put their hands, with the palm of their hands over, but not touching my body, but there were about 5 or 6 of them all around me with their hands, just their palms, over different organs in my body. And out of their hands were different gradients of light in the form of colors that were making the organs that I could see in my body, from my head to my midsection, vibrate. And that was the healing process, where ultimately my sight, everything was restored to me. And I looked much younger. So you're going to have some competition, Josh, in a little bit.
Yes, sir. Oh, well, Brother Minister, speaking
Yes,
of your vision-like experience, did you ever, what was it that made you believe when you were younger that your father was still alive?
Well, I have a mole, right, here it is. I have a mole right here on this left side of my left cheek on my face. I don't know if you can see it, but it's in the exact same spot as my father, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I remember when he was pronounced dead on February 25th, 1975. Of course, very shortly thereafter, they took all of us, the family, down to view the body after they had already prepared it before the burial. And when I went in to see my father's body, at the time I was 9 years old, just before my 10th birthday. And because me and my father used to play with each other by pinching and kissing each other's cheeks, so I knew his face all too well. And when I looked into the coffin where his body was supposed to be laying, naturally it's cold and it's hard, but I could not find this mole. It wasn't on his face. And so that was my first evidence. Secondly, it didn't quite look like him to me. And you can say, well, they all look different once the body is prepared and no life is in it. Okay, I agree. But the mole wasn't there. And I was looking for it specifically. And so that was my little evidence. And before the Honorable Elijah Muhammad made his transition, he said to me in our home in the country of Mexico, he grabbed my arms. I was probably 8, almost 9 at the time. It was I was 9 years old. It was 1974. And he said, one day the people are going to think I'm dead, but don't you believe it. He said, I will live to see your children's children. So I only got 2 right now, 2 daughters. And
Yes, sir.
I strongly feel they will give me some grandchildren. And I think that if you look at my children's children, which my father promised that he would live to see, that takes him to what he promised, that Allah promised him at least 150 years. That was equal to the amount of years that Yaqub lived. He lived to be 150 years to make a race of devils. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad promised at least 150 years was to make, as he said in his 1974 Savior's Day dress, a nation of gods. So I believe that right now, as my father is 121 years old, which is nothing compared to the prophets of old. It's nothing compared to, even in this modern day, the life that is lived by many Caucasians who live in the Caucasus Mountains and are walking around 150, 250, even up to 400 years of age right now, today. Why wouldn't the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, who carried the hardest job known for any human being to carry, why wouldn't Master Farrakhan Muhammad make good on that promise? So I'm expecting, if I may use these words affectionately and respectfully, Pop's gonna be around for a minute.
Yes, sir.
And I'm gonna tell you something else he said. He said in about 30, 40 years from now, many of his followers would start coming into their powers. That means you, Joshua generation. Powers means capacity. And that capacity is more on a psychic, spiritual level that is transferred into abilities in your physical being. Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We right here. We right here. Yes, sir. We right here.
Dial tone. Okay. Well, I was like, dang, man, you could have said goodbye. But I think that that ability that is spiritual and intellectual is already awakening. But first we have to do like the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan prescribes in the study guides, in particular, study guide 18 or 19, rising above emotion into the thinking of God. That is your challenge, Josh. That is my challenge. That is everyone that is listening and watching this on the social media. That is our challenge today, to rise above our emotional feeling. Emotion comes from the word emote, which means to be moved. Rise above and become immune to the forces outside of you that are moving you to behave contrary to your nature. Rise above the emotion into the thinking process of God. And to start up the thinking process, the powering of the psychic ability is stemming and streaming from your spiritual reconnection to God. How about that?
Yes, sir. That's powerful, brother, mister.
And for other youth that is on the line, I don't know what your lifestyle habits are. Smoke that.
They said that, Minister.
I guess you should have warned them, Josh. Your uncle's a little crazy here, okay?
No, sir. We need that, and I love your expression, and we love your expression of how honest and transparent you are, Brother Minister. We appreciate that.
Just keeping it real.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My next question is, when your father left and you're going through puberty and you're protecting your mother, you're becoming a young man, what was the climate like being, it's just Mother Tynetta and the 4 children? How was your mindset as far as your faith was concerned?
Well, there's something very key that I will share, and it ties to why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad took and established us in the country of Mexico in 1974. And it was because he knew that it was close to the time of his departure, and he knew the danger that existed amongst hypocrites that were in the nation of Islam, which in 1957, he first said that the nation of Islam was honeycombed with hypocrites. Hypocrites are of the mindset, as you'll find in the 13 original rules of instructions that are given to the laborers in your supreme wisdom. It says that the hypocrites thought that they should share equally with the messenger. You see, this is the thing that is happening even to this day. And how that happens is you look at 4 chief leading satanic characteristics that rise up in the human character. One and foremost is lying, dishonesty. Number 2, it's false pride, arrogance, the inordinate self-perception. 3 is what is called greed, or the other word for greed is avarice. And 4 is the most deadly of them all. It's called envy. Jealousy is destroying you within, but when jealousy goes unchecked, it morphs into envy, where you start fostering the idea of murder. You want to murder your brother or your sister who seems to have garnered favor above you. And that's best told in the story of Cain and Abel, which led to Cain's envy acting out in murdering and slaying of his brother Abel. And the names are significant too. The envy is that his brother Abel seemed able and was sweating in the fields and feeling like he wasn't getting his due credit. And that's how it is with us. When some people seem to effortlessly be able to do what they do, while others are in the grind trying to get there. You see? This is in our nation. This is in every mosque, every study group. It's called pseudo members. Pseudo is the word the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan taught me. He said they're all over the place. They're even on these websites, on these online conferences. These are the words of the minister. Pseudo. Pseudo means not authentic, not genuine, and false. The taking of 4 devil's heads that are in the lessons, the minister taught me, are leading characteristics. It's not devils under skin color. It's the devil's that are leading characteristics in your heart that leads to lying, false pride, greed, and envy. These leading characteristics must be severed from our character so that you can become a pure conduit for the use of God and his will and his way. That's why cleanliness is next to godliness, because cleanliness means, by definition, the removal of obstructions. The obstructions in the brain, the obstructions in the heart, the obstructions in your relationship from keeping them from being harmonious.
Excellent, Minister. Man, great response and great, man, once again, thank you very much. And I see you all's questions and I'm coming to them, and I thank you all for tuning in. Brother Minister, I have been studying the history of the nation, and I saw when you were talking about envy, and
Yes.
a lot of the attacks prior to 75 came dealing with Malcolm X and his split and all of this during that climate where there's an attack on you, the personal life of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, your mother, your family. How did your Mother Tynetta hold it together during that time when everybody was attacking, the domestic life of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Well, just quite frankly, they did many things in an abusive manner to my mother and to those of us, her children. In fact, one of the things that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told my mother as we were moving into the palace after its completion in 1974, he said, "I have brought you into a most envious position." Likewise, that's just domestically in his family. But likewise, it was with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. A most envious, excuse me, a most envious position, you see. And I believe, Brother Joshua,
yes, sir,
you will experience it if you have not already experienced it by this important lesson. As your parents have been hard-working laborers, as long as I've known them and heard about them. Your beloved mother, Sister Sharifa, hard-working, MGT, the definitive of Sister Soldier. And your beloved father, regional minister and former supreme captain of the Nation of Islam, our brother Abdul Sharif Muhammad. What I admired most, I met your father, I think it was in 87 or 88, when I was going around the country raising money to get back our national center. And when I came to Washington, D.C., where your father was the captain, I admired him. And he has been a very significant aid and helper to your father. Likewise, your mother. Their imprint and footprint is deep in the history of this Nation of Islam. That makes them enviable. And their children like you, Josh. I ain't trying to blow smoke up you, but
Yes, sir.
I just love you, man, and you can't do nothing about it. Just take it. Take it a little bit. But
I love
you
you
know,
more, sir.
looking at how you, by Allah's grace, mercy, spirit, and through your parents, you're a beautiful soul, Josh.
Praise be to Allah.
Beautiful soul. So help me, Allah. You are. I don't know your sister well, but I remember her, and she's
Yes, sir.
precious too. And I can't think of the other two. I don't. Maybe they were too little.
They
But
were little, Naima and Rashad, but they were very little. Yes, sir.
yeah, but you, brother, and how you attract the youth. Yes, how you attract them is already creating enemies for you who are envious of you. And it starts with thinking of you as a privileged child
Yes, sir.
because of your parents. This I lived through and still contend with.
Mm.
But they don't know your domestic suffering. They don't know your life story intimately. They don't know your losses and your gains. They don't. They just see you in a position that they envy. And some of them will they will try to knock you off.
Yes,
So
sir.
this is why it is important to reference that if in 1957 the Nation of Islam, according to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, was honeycombed with hypocrites, what do you think it is today?
Mm.
You think it's any less? With the hypocrites honeycombed today, caked in the nation.
Mm. Mm. Yes,
They
sir.
seek to murder the messenger of God in our midst, who is the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. And I'm going to tell you, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said to me and a few others at his table one day, he said, you all have to be very careful. He said, because the enemy can't get to me. And because he can't get to me, who do you think he's going to go after? He's going to go after those who are closest to me, who support me and lift me. Think over this. And I feel that in you, Brother Josh. I know it with your parents, and we're not free of it. And of course, I know it quite intimately in my own growth and development, being a son of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, along with my brother, Student Minister Ishmael Muhammad, and my two other siblings. You see?
Yes, sir.
Murder of the messenger includes all of his offspring that are by blood or by spirit.
Mm.
You see? You're an
Yes, sir.
offspring of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Your parents are offsprings. And according to the quality of their faith, which is found in their works, they are doing and in a most envious position.
Mm.
So the Quran says in Surah 113, seek refuge in Allah. From what? From the envier when he envies.
Yes,
That
sir.
says
Yes,
to
sir.
me that the only protection against the murderous, wicked envier is Allah. It's Allah.
Yes, sir.
We can't fight them, but Allah can. Our best defense is the offense of our faith and trust in Allah.
Excellent. Praise be to Allah. And thank you, Brother Minister, for that great response. And I thank you all for your comments and thank you all for watching. Brother Minister, with
Yes.
yes, sir, my siblings often make fun of me for my closeness to my mother because my father was always gone, holding posts or helping build a nation. You always seem to be very close to Mother Tynetta. What are some things that she left with you that helped you develop as a man and as a Muslim? Some of the lessons that she taught you.
It was a note that said, "Dear son, you were the worst of the batch of children I ever raised." No, you know what? In truth, Josh, I did. I was a rebel. I was not an angelical son, but I absolutely adored my mother. I loved my mother, and she knew it. And I told her that, and she always knew it. I was very blessed to have my mom, and we are naturally, often, Joshua, listen very carefully, closer to our mothers. Because as sons, generally we would think we'll put together son and father,
yes,
daughter and mother.
Yes, sir.
But psychologically, it works the other way around. It's son, mother, daughter, father.
Yes, sir.
Think over this. And so when you have that strong connection to your mother, well, that was established in the womb. And I learned something so deep, if you study this, about embryos and babies before they're born. They say it happens also with female babies and infants in the womb from a prenatal existence. But they did the study more specially focused on the male. And it says that before the baby, male child, just before it comes to the term of gestation, meaning it comes to birth out of the womb, they say a miraculous thing takes place. The baby begins to send, look at this, send brain cells and heart cells to the mother, almost as a gesture of gratitude for her suffering 9 months to develop that baby. Why to the brain and to the heart? This establishes a spiritual, invisible umbilical cord that can never be broken, not even in death, Josh.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My mom still communicates with me. Literally, to this day. I ain't trying to sound spooky.
Yes, sir.
But I gave her cells that she gave me to her brain and to her heart. Now, how do I establish dialing up my mom? Check this out. I got it from the minister. He said to me these words, and I give them to you and all of my beautiful brothers and sisters that might be on this line. The minister said to me, he said this just before he traveled to Iran this last time. He said, whenever I am away, just bring me up into your mind and thinking, and there I will be. Bring me up into your mind. That's very powerful because that thought alone is the beginning of the nurturing and cultivation of your innate ability to tune in. Tune in to an energy. And that's what spirit is, energy. That's the essence. That's the soul of every life form. Energy is never destroyed. It only transforms. And remember, you gave back brain cells and heart cells. The heart represents love, man, the greatest creative force in the universe, which the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan taught me. It is the overarching ministry of the Nation of Islam. And the Bible says God is love. And as long as you love, what you love, if it's a human being connected to God, will experience eternal love. So my mother is with me now. My mother is speaking with me now.
Yes, sir.
She's talking right now. That bond was when she was physically present, and it remains. While the essence of my mom, a portion of it, will always be in me. And I'm going to pass it down to my daughters, and they'll pass it down to their children. That makes the life, the essence, the spirit of mom ever living. And you are doing that for your mom. For whenever that time comes that Allah called her precious soul back, as the Quran says, from Allah we all come, and to Allah is the eventual return. My mom is not gone. She's just out of view.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Praise
they are not dead, the Quran says. They are alive, but you perceive not. Perception is based on the degree or level of your intellectual and spiritual capacity to see. You have the capacity. Everybody on the line has that capacity to see beyond the physical material, what is called third dimension of this material physical universe. You have that capacity.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And thank you all for your comments and watching. Brother Minister, not all of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's children decided to stand with the Most Honorable Louis Farrakhan in the rebuilding phases. What was it about your relationship with the minister, and what did you see in him that made you want to stand with him as he upheld your father's name?
My father. That's a short, sweet answer, and it's the truth. I saw my father in him. I heard my father in him. And since by the time we were able to join the minister, and the minister cared for me and my family, as we were like Hagar, running between the two mountains, the Safa and Marwa, looking for a caravan, for somebody to take care of us. That was the minister who cared for us. He put me through school. He put shoes on my feet. He put clothes on my back. Him and Mother Khadijah put food in my stomach. And not just that, they embraced me. They embraced me. They embraced my siblings. They embraced my mom. And at one time in the early 80s, man, we all lived at that house on Damon here in Chicago.
Yes, sir.
All of us. There was so many of us in that house, man. I used to, as God is my witness, I used to sleep under the piano, you know, because my that piano, that baby grand, has always been my baby. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
As
sir.
God is my witness, I'd sleep under it. But we were all over the place, man. I don't know how many of us were living in that house, you know. But the minister has been a father to me. And Mother Khadijah has been all day a mother to me. And by the time my mother made her transition in 2015, I have not left Chicago because he's cared for me and kept me through my health challenges, you know?
Praise be to Allah.
So I'm
Yes, sir.
very grateful. I'm very, very grateful. But I also see the minister primarily as the spiritual representation of the wisdom, the guidance. It's like, as the minister used to say back in the day, Farrakhan is dead. It's Elijah Muhammad that is alive in me. I bear witness. But in addition, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is still alive in his own flesh. But he is blessed at this time, representative in the Honorable Louis Farrakhan.
Excellent. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And great question. I mean, great response. And thank you all for your love and comments in the comment section. Brother Minister, on a lighter note, what do you do for fun?
Oh my gosh. Live, breathe, and look for the humor in everything. I wake up every morning, Josh, and I just don't take me too serious. I don't take my life too serious. I laugh at my ordeals, literally, as therapy, so that I don't lose my mind. Y'all gonna make me lose my mind up in here, up in here. Please don't make me lose my when people take themselves too serious, they start pontificating. And I want everybody online to look up that word, pontificate. It's actually a certain class or level of the priesthood in the church where they just talk and say what they think they know. Think over this. And they don't like to be questioned. No, I'm a student. And I think that title, student, that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gives to all of his student laborers, is to keep us humble. You just can't grow if you're prideful, if you think too much of yourself. So one thing that I do to keep that beast of pride, arrogance, and ego in me, potentially and expressive, to keep it at bay, I laugh at it. I laugh at myself. You know, you ain't all that, Rasul. But yes, I know and believe with all my heart, every one of us on this line will have our day to shine as a witness bearing that Allah allowed you to come into existence for a reason and a season. It may not be your season, but the reason is still being cultivated, which guarantees that for that reason, it has its season. Let's be patient. Just be patient. Your time and your turn is coming.
Yes, sir. Excellent. Okay,
love.
Brother Minister,
Yeah.
you spoke of Stevie Wonder being your favorite person, a celebrity. You've come in contact with many. Or have there been any that stood out to you with your interactions and relations with them outside of Stevie Wonder?
Well, I'm an untrained musician. I
Mm,
can't read, I can't write. So it's one of my natural gifts.
mm,
And early on, when I was playing in clubs that had jazz bands and whatnot in the country of Mexico, I started singing with a very, very professional jazz band that was a Caucasian man from here in the United States, much, much, much older gentleman. His name is Larry Russell, and he put
mm,
together some of the finest jazz artists in the country of Mexico, and he was touring. And Larry called me and asked me to start singing when he had gigs.
mm,
When I was playing with him and singing, I met a beautiful Black woman who was also much older and very popular jazz singer, Anna Marie. And then one night, as we were playing at a place called, it's a Casino de la Selva in Cuernavaca, he brings on stage a very famous musician that I wasn't familiar with. His name is Dexter Gordon.
mm,
Dexter Gordon is played in a Clint Eastwood production or movie back in the 80s. It came out called Round Midnight. And that
mm.
man that is portraying, I think Charlie Parker, was Dexter Gordon, who's a real live legend in the jazz field.
Mm.
Who has he's been dead now for quite a few years, but I had the opportunity of playing with him.
Mm.
But Stevie Wonder has been by far my favorite. After him, I love, and he, may Allah be pleased with him also, who has recently made his transition, and that is Al Jarreau. I
Mm.
loved
Mm.
Al Jarreau. Loved me some George Benson. And
Mm.
I love the artist, a Caucasian artist out of London, England, Sting. I
Oh, yes,
love
sir.
Sting.
Yes,
So
sir.
these are the artists that have been strong uh, influences on my musical career, if you would, along with people like Gladys Knight. It's something about her voice. And it was put best by a good friend of mine in Mexico who said, I'm going to tell you the difference between, this was way back in the late 70s, early 80s, said, I'm going to tell you the difference between Gladys Knight and the voice of Barbara Streisand.
Mm.
He said, Barbara Streisand sounds good, but Gladys Knight feels good.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so
Mm.
that influence, I did not start caring much about how well I sound, but how great I could affect the feelings of
Mm.
the
Mm.
other person, the listener, when I perform.
Mm. Mm.
Because I'd rather feel good than just sound good,
Yes, sir.
you know?
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Great. And thank you very much, Brother Minister.
You're welcome.
Um, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
You
sir.
you making me feel like a superstar. So hold on, I just want to see if my makeup is on.
Okay, brother. Now,
Yes, sir.
you because you came up with pressure and you grew, and we're going to come to you. I got questions about you being the minister of regions at the same time as states in Detroit or Michigan.
Yes.
But has there ever been a time where there have been death threats, or you felt your life has been threatened and you had to challenge that fear?
Oh, many of them. Many of them. Throughout the ministry and all the way back to when we were children
Mm,
with my mother in our home.
mm,
And it was when our lives initially were threatened by our own family members
mm,
that came to actually, uh, um, yeah, take us out. My mother and all of us, her four children. And yes, I have felt it many times and have received threats to that effect since I went, or not went, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan sent me to Detroit, at the age of 23 to become a new minister, you know? Because remember, and this should be a lesson that we accept, and that is that whenever Allah exalts you in rank or position over others, you produce enemies,
mm,
enemies that will seek your life because they're infested with the dis-ease of envy. You see?
yes,
They
sir.
do not believe they can better you. So they have to eliminate you to shine, at least in
Mm,
their twisted mind.
mm,
No? And the Honorable Louis Farrakhan taught us like this, as you begin to grow in good works, so do your enemies.
mm.
You see?
Yes,
And
sir.
then an example was given to me about if you, in your faithfulness, take 2 steps, your enemies have to take 2 steps to keep up and take an additional 2 steps to come against you.
Mm,
So if you got to take 2 steps, the enemy got to take 4. And here is a very important lesson. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, according to what my mother taught me, the key to getting rid of the hypocrites and the enemies in your life is to outpace them.
mm,
See, if I take 2 and my enemies have to take 4, then I got to take 4 to make my enemies have to take 8.
mm,
And
mm.
if they can still keep up effectively in their opposition, then I got to take 5 and let my enemies take 10. Because an enemy is not a real enemy just keeping up with you. To come against you, he's got to outpace you. So the key is outpace your enemies without being distracted from what God is moving you to do.
Mm, mm. Yes, sir.
Outpace your enemies. Outwork your enemies until your enemies die of exhaustion.
Mm,
And if your enemies are effective at this time in your life, then that means you're not making enough progress in your own faith pace.
yes, sir.
Mhm. So step
Yes,
up
sir.
the pace. If your enemies are gaining success, step up your pace.
Yes, sir.
Eventually, you begin to move so fast. It's kind of like the planet are rotating on the axis, 1,037 and 1/3 miles per hour, right? On its
Yes, sir.
way around the sun. Well, what it does when it's rotating, it's producing a revolution. Think over this. and its revolution produces gravitation. And it makes it so that it does not lose anything. Gravity is what holds all of us that walk freely on the planet from spinning off the planet.
Yes, sir.
So if you step up your pace, find what pace keeps all of your blessings with you. If you're moving too slow, a thief, as a hypocrite, will always be able to successfully steal from you. But in a deeper sense, don't let the enemy steal your joy.
Yes,
Don't
sir.
let the enemy steal your spirit. Don't let the opposition slow you down.
Yes,
In
sir.
fact, once you identify opposition in your life, work harder.
Yes, sir.
If it's from within you, work harder.
Yes, sir.
If you feel depressed, work harder.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let
Yes, sir.
no force suppress you. Huh?
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
let
Yes, sir.
your thinking and your spirit in sync with God elevate you to the point where the enemy can't reach you. I feel a rap coming on, my brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, brother minister, I have to backtrack because you said something and then you got off of it and I never heard that before. You said your own family tried to hurt you and your mother. How did that get resolved, or was it resolved, or like did y'all ever heal, or did y'all ever come back together? Y'all just went separate ways. How did that end?
Well, my own family means all the families of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad,
Yes, sir.
who had 22 children.
Mm.
And that means they were from wives.
Yes, sir.
And it's primarily the great envy that showed up in the wives as well as in the children they produced. And so when you have them vying with each other, and it was primarily under the control, the authority that was held by the first family of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that caused all of us to suffer. Was members of that first family that plotted against the life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and also sought to take the life of the remnant of his seed. And but the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, his wisdom put us in the country of Mexico, which he said was a protective zone. In fact, there are 5 countries in the world that are called protective zones by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who said where in the future some of his followers would be able to go when great calamities, judgment, and wrath came to this country. And Mexico is one of those protective zones. And we know we're coming to that point when you look at the news today and the efforts of this president who wants to build this wall.
Yes, sir.
It's interesting that there was an attorney by the name of Alejandro Tijerina who met with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the early 1960s. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told him to go and meet with the government of Mexico to ask him that when the time of war comes to this country, his followers would need a place to go. And if the government would be so kind, we would be so grateful that we would be willing to pay for even as much as a glass of water that they would provide. Other protective zones is Canada. And another one in the South Pacific. And of course, you know, there are siblings that Master Farrakhan Muhammad has. And one of the places where one of his brothers was said to be living is just south of the border.
Oh, okay, Ramin, so we got okay, I did know that. So we got you can't just say, of course, you know, not to me. I know, so I did not know that. So, of course, I did not know that. So, Master Farrakhan Muhammad had siblings.
But you know what's interesting? I'm going to tell you this. This is where I admired most your father. Your father. Because I saw him secure the most honorable amongst us, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in a way like I had not seen anybody secure him before or since that occasion. Your father is a special man, and I pray that Allah will bless him through his trials, because we are promised by Allah, all of us have to go through trials. And it is in our trials ordained by Allah that sifts us, and out of which, or out of that trial, we discover what we have deposited in us. I pray that the sifting of his and every good meaning believer will always show that they are good and faithful and not wicked and hypocritical.
Yes, sir.
Because that's what the Quran teaches, you know? And do men think they will be left alone on saying they believe and not be tried? And surely Allah tried those before you, and in this way, he will know those who are true, and he will know the liars. So we are all being tried. Please don't think for 1 minute, because of rank, title, or bloodline, family, do not ever think that any of us are exempt of painful near-death trials. And I know you can bear witness to that.
Yes, sir.
Because of the family from which you are born.
Yes, sir. Praise the Lord. Okay, but Minister, that's excellent. Can you please expound on Master Farrakhan Muhammad's siblings? Could you please just say a little bit, follow up with that? Because that was new for me. So could you help me with that, please?
Let me say to you, as devils would put it,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
For the right price, I tell you anything. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that he was one of 4 siblings. And the first one, as you may know, is a girl, a daughter, not of Master Farrakhan Muhammad, of his father, Alfonso.
Mm.
It was a girl. And he used to say humorously that with the first girl, he said, "Oh, I missed," because he was trying to produce a son
Yes, sir.
that would be clothed, his skin clothed in a way and color that would enable him to get in amongst the enemy, looking like the enemy, but being totally for us.
Mm.
And so the second child was a male child, Master Fard Muhammad. And then he had two other siblings, which were also male children.
Mm.
And
Mm.
one at that time was said to be living in the country of Mexico, and one was said to be living amongst the brown people.
Mm.
Who are the brown people?
I don't want to say the wrong thing, Reverend, so I'm just going to be quiet. I'm just going to be quiet.
Speak now or forever hold your truth. No, but the brown people are the Japanese. And that is where the other sibling was said to be living.
Praise be
And,
so loud. Okay, that's
you know,
excellent.
there are many other teachings about that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave. However, as a good rule and a governing principle, he said it during Savior's Day 1973 when he talked about Master Fard Muhammad and his mother being a white woman from the Caucasus Mountains. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, but the point is, he could not go too far into that, lest the hills not welcome him. And there's a message in that.
Yes, sir. Praise be so loud.
So we won't go too far.
Okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I just want to clear because I never heard that, so I want to clear it up. Yes, sir. Brother Minister, okay, here's what we need to know. The advice for your father. What advice would you give to future fathers?
The Holy Quran refers to the sperm of a man as worthless water. I could not say that the sperm of a believing man is worthless water. I believe that the Quran is referring to the quality of a man, as science will show that the electrical current in the brain, we know that every thought secretes chemicals into the body. So a man with worthless sperm has to be living on worthless energy in his mind. So a deactivated brain that is operating on a spiritual blind, deaf, and dumb current is what scientifically would produce worthless sperm. You see?
Yes, sir.
But what kind of electricity, which is what they say, a current of thought or idea in the brain, it looks like a current of electricity. What value does a righteous thinking, operating, and functioning brain, what kind of chemicals would it secrete? Think over this.
Yes, sir.
So, worth in your sperm as a man is determined by the quality of your mind and its thinking.
Yes,
You
sir.
see? And so, to fathers, in the word father is the word author. You see?
Yes, sir.
And we refer to God in biblical terms as the Father, not as the father or progenitor simply of our flesh, but he is the progenitor and the author of the quality of your thinking.
Yes,
As
sir.
the Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he. We are equal in flesh to the quality of our thinking.
Yes,
So,
sir.
my advice, if any, that I could offer to fathers is your fathering of these children that you don't know that come into the world must start with how you treat the woman when she becomes pregnant with seed. And arguably, even before your seed enters the womb of a woman, future fathers who are right now playing with sex are playing with a power that can determine the quality of the next generation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So if you surrender entirely to do the will of God, that thought alone will foster a new creation from a chemical standpoint that will give a new quality on a physical, material dimension. And every child that you conceive through the womb of a woman who is designed, look at this. The Bible says Christ is the head of man.
Yes,
So
sir.
that right there tells you that your thinking has to be in the order of your belief in God, so that Christ become the king under your dome. Ah, you get it?
Yes, sir. I'm with you. Yes, sir.
Is Christ, excuse me, we have to ask ourselves as men, is the king, which is Christ, not your ego,
Yes, sir.
is the king on his throne in your dome?
Mm. Mm.
And if he is, then he is already maturing, transforming, like the scripture says, behold, he, if you invite him into your dome, he makes all things new.
Yes, sir.
And that's what your sperm is. It becomes the chemical compound of a new reality. And the Quran says, for the believing man, the believing woman. For the disbelieving man, the disbelieving woman. When Cain was kicked out of the garden, they said he went into the land of Nod. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, I don't know where the land of Nod is, but I know what Nod means. Nod is you nod to sleep. And
Yes,
so
sir.
what that's saying is Cain fell asleep spiritually and intellectually. He became blind, deaf, and dumb. And it says that he found a mate in the land of Nod, where he produced a family. And he said that goes to show you that whatever direction a man goes, there's always a woman to help him get there.
Mm.
If you're headed to hell, there's always a woman that'll help you get there much quicker.
Yes, sir.
If you're headed to heaven, which is an altered, exalted state of mind and quality of behavior, there's a woman that can take you there too. So for the believing man, the believing woman. For the disbelieving man, the disbelieving woman. Look for your partner in this faith journey. If she does not share your spirit, if she does not share your faith, which is works, because faith without works is dead, then she may not be the right one for you. But then again, if you want her more than the pleasure of God, then she is the right one for that mindset. And she'll help you get to hell real quick. So all of you all that got girlfriends named Hoochie Mama, she can nurse you to hell, and she's a Hoochie Mama. But if you seek better than that for her and for yourself, then look for your likeness. Look for your likeness in spirit and in righteous behavior. That's a match that is pleasing in the eyes of Allah, and He will bless you. The Quran says you take one step towards Allah, He takes two toward you.
Yes, sir.
And that, like that old song is, it takes two, baby.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, excellent, Brother Minister. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to enlighten us, to share your stories, and to help heal me personally, and to help heal us all with your words and your ministry of love. May Allah bless you and your family, Brother Minister, in your recovery and your spirit. You have inspired me just with your spirit alone. Before you even opened your mouth, just your energy helped lift my spirit. So I know it did the same for many people who are watching. I love you, Brother Minister. I love your devotion. I love your way of being unique, because it helps me inspire to want to stay myself and be unique as well in my expression. So I thank you.
Yes. Oh,
thank you, Minister. Yes, sir.
I don't know. How would we entertain the questions?
Those work. That's it. The questions was coming from the audience. The questions people were sending me. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You a bad man, Josh. You a bad man. You shook up the world, as I leave it. I love you, and please give my love and greetings to your beautiful parents. I am so humbled and grateful to share this time with you. It's not work at all. It is so joyful. It is joy that I'm feeling right now. And I hope you'll invite me back in the future, brother.
Oh, absolutely, brother. You know you got to come back. I want you to a part two is definitely necessary, and I look forward to reaching back out to you, sir.
I look forward to it too, Josh. And may Allah bless you too in your individual life. Because one of the things in my journey, as I've been very sick and going through some health challenges, I got to a point where I really found and realized that Allah loves us individually. Not just as a group, but individually. That means that He sees and He's working with us individually. And I would like to close with the minister's words the minister's words during Project Exodus. He said, some of us will run out. Others may walk out, but we all must get out of this infernal, satanic world and culture to be pleasing in the eyes of Allah. And to do that, all you got to do is submit, open your heart, and Allah will come in and make room in your assembly to forgive and accept others who may have trespassed on you, others who may have hurt you, others who may have deceived you, because you don't want your hurt or disappointment to be a block for every human being that needs to grow beyond where they are. Love, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, love means freedom, justice, and equality. And like the back page of every Final Call newspaper that has the Muslim program, which the Honorable Louis Farrakhan said is our Constitution. We want freedom, justice, and equality for all, regardless of their creed, their class, or their color.
Yes, sir.
I thank you.
Thank you, sir. And assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, Josh.
And thank you all for watching. And thank you all. I really appreciate that. Assalamu alaikum.